On September 20th, 2022, Five Nights at Freddy's Tales from the Pizzaplex number 2, Happs, was released to the public. This is a new, ongoing book series that seems to mostly be based off the most recently released FNaF game, Security Breach. The series seems to follow the same basic format as the previous series of this franchise, As Per Frights, containing 3 short stories and an epilogue. After the first book, Lally's game gave a strong start to this hopefully memorable and enjoyable series. I was hoping that this book would do the same. And in my opinion, it was even better than the first. So I'd like to share my personal thoughts on each story in this book and how well they seem to do. If you guys like this video, please be sure to not only subscribe, but feel free to let me know whether or not I should also review Lally's game sometime in the future. Also, just a warning, there will be major spoilers for the book if you have not read it. So keep that in mind, and let's get into it. So our first story is called Help Wanted. No, not that one. There's not one mention of the VR game in this story, though I really thought there would be. The main protagonist is Steve, a down-on-his-luck guy who works at a crappy gas station job, dates a girl named Amanda, and develops games in his free time. Also, sorry if I don't include many specific details about the plot. I just want to make a small summary of the story so I can get into the review. One day, Steve is approached by a man named Brock Edwards, who apparently is a representative of Fazbear Entertainment. He says that the company has been impressed by the games Steve has put out online, and wants him to create 4 horror games based around the strange myths surrounding Freddy Fazbear's Pizza. Steve declines this offer, feeling that passing these stories off as jokes seems almost disrespectful. Later, Steve is messaged by a beautiful girl known as Victoria, and he is so captivated that he wants to date her instead of Amanda. He drives to her house during the weekend to find that it has absolutely nothing inside, with the white walls just being completely bare. A smoke alarm suddenly goes off, and Steve faints. He wakes up with a foggy memory, and the house is suddenly filled with furniture. Apparently, he's a family man now, with Victoria as his wife, along with 2 children. Steve enjoys this new life and also agrees to make those horror games for Fazbear Entertainment. Things are going well until Steve starts to hear noises around his house. His family also starts to act slightly weird as well. Soon he has nightmares about strange, shadowy creatures attacking him, and cuts appear on his body. Victoria never believes what he sees though. Throughout all of this, DJ Dan, a music broadcaster on the radio, keeps announcing that snow is piling up outside, making it difficult to leave the house. Steve eventually decides to break the activated smoke alarm after being attacked by multiple shadow spiders. This reveals that the house is made up of gears and machinery, and Steve's wife and kids are actually robots. He runs and locks He locks the bedroom door to get away, but DJ Dan starts talking again, saying that this life was better than the life Steve originally had, and that Steve just had to press a button on the radio to make all the nightmarish horrors go away. After some hesitation, Steve presses the button, making everything return to normal. He hugs his wife and feels happy. So happy that he ignores his wife stabbing him in the heart. Yeah, don't stay committed to a relationship, people. It could cost you your life. All in all, this was a pretty decent story. It's probably my least favorite in the book, but that's not saying a whole lot. I think the biggest reason why I didn't love this story so much was because of how disappointed I felt concerning the lore of the games. We never see the actual content of the games being created, just the fact that they have jump scares and are based on Freddy's. Also, I know FNaF is ridiculously out there with its stories nowadays, but I can't help but feel like the story is a little too out there. Like, seriously, how can this type of machinery be possible, even by FNaF standards? Nonetheless, I really liked how the story goes deeper into just how shady Fazbear Entertainment can be, to the point where they literally kidnap people to get what they want. Steve was a pretty neat protagonist, and the way he bonds with his family was quite nice. Also, this is only the second FNaF story to give me false hope for a story based on the VR game. The first one was Prankster, and I honestly like this one more than that story, because at least the antagonists in this story actually had a clear reason to do what they did. Sort of. Now that I'm writing the script down, I actually have no clue what the shadow animals were supposed to represent or why they appeared. Maybe the mechanisms of the house spawned them, who knows. At the end of the day, this story is around 7.3 out of a 10. It has some good elements, but it could have made a lot more sense, honestly. On to the second story, Happs. Actually, I just want to say that I find it weird how the story on the cover of the book isn't actually the first story in the book. I just find that a little strange. The protagonists in this story are Aiden and Jace, two ninth graders who are pretty much outcasts both at school and at home. Aiden made a fool out of himself at a talent show and doesn't feel too loved by his parents. And Jace is a pretty big nerd, and it's hinted that his dad is abusive towards him. The two of them are at Freddy Fazbear's Mega Pizzaplex, and they decide to go scare some kids in a giant tube maze that surrounds the entire building. Well, it doesn't really surround it, it's kind of like in there, like a part of the building. This is a very huge structure, and I'm pretty sure the tubes are big enough to walk in. Anyways, they creep up on some little kids and freak them out, with one girl calling them jerks. The duo moves off, feeling sorry for what they did, and in the process, they run into Happs. Happs is apparently a small cleaning robot who patrols the tubes. He can also activate mirrored partitions to block off certain tubes so that maintenance can be performed. Aiden and Jace decide to check out a dark section of the maze, but it's a dead end. Aiden tries pulling on a segment of the tube that's jutting out, but the kids are caught by Happs. The robot tries to grab Jace and lead him away, but Aiden pushes him off. As the robot persists, Aiden is reminded of how unfair his life is, and he and Jace start kicking at him. The tube suddenly breaks off with the three inside. Aiden and Jace are unharmed, but Happs is nowhere to be found. The kids are happy that they have a whole part of the maze to themselves, and it makes Aiden feel invisible from the people around him. They can see kids in the main part of the building, but those kids can't see them. A couple hours pass by, and the kids start to feel hungry and worried that they haven't found an easy way out yet. If they try to look for an exit, they hear a noise. Happs suddenly appears, looking beat up and mangled. Worst of all, his big foam hands have been torn off, and under them are sharp metal rods. His voice is screwed up as well, with him just repeating, "Lost out with me." Aiden and Jace run off, but Happs can easily climb up certain areas to reach them. The kids also face a few partitions that Happs set up to block their path. This culminates to a point where the kids decide to try and destroy Happs once and for all. Whilst looking for a way to do so, however, they exit a slide and fall into a ball pit, with Happs right behind. Happs goes for Jace first, and literally hacks his ankle off and stabs his shoulder. Aiden desperately tries to carry Jace out, but Happs just keeps stabbing the poor kid. Finally, Jace succumbs to his injuries, and Aiden is forced to leave his friend behind. Aiden runs away, but faces partition after partition. He realizes that Happs has lured him into a kill zone, and it is only a matter of time before he gets tired of running and dies the same way his friend did. He looks out at the kids in the main part of the Pizzaplex, and realizes that he got his wish to be invisible. This story is actually really scary if you think about it. Not only are these kids trapped in an area where practically no one will find them, but they are being hunted down by a robot who unknowingly is going to kill them. I say unknowingly because it's likely that Happs is not malicious or evil at all. He's simply trying to follow his programming to help kids, though he's malfunctioning and ends up doing the exact opposite. I was expecting Aiden and Jace to be a-hole protagonists, but they were actually pretty sympathetic. I was hoping they would get a happy ending, but when I got to the part where Jace's ankle got sliced off, I knew there was like no help left for these guys. How sad. I'm not sure how the maze really works though. Like, how easily can a child leave depending on how far in they are? I mean, I guess that's what Happs is for, apart from cleaning, but it still seems pretty dangerous. Also, though, I kind of wish we got a bit more detail on the families of the protagonists and why they aren't the best, as it would have made the characters feel even more well written. Also, there's this one part of the story that switches to the classmates of the protagonists riding bumper cars, and I don't think it really added much. Overall, despite some minor flaws, this was a really good story, and I enjoyed it a lot. 8.7. Next up, we have the third and final story, B7. And oh boy, I'm excited to discuss this one. The main protagonist is Billy, and he starts off as a 5-year-old getting ready to watch Freddy and Friends. The character starts singing a song, and all of a sudden, Billy, being the silly, eccentric child he is, starts singing and walking like he's an animatronic, also announcing that he is an animatronic. Next morning, he continues to behave and think like a robot, with his parents keeping up the act. at first. At school, he also behaves like an animatronic, though he pushes a little girl and sings loud enough to get him picked up early. He loses all his friends later on, and he decides to act a little more normal. By normal, he decides to get an update that will allow him to behave a little more like a little kid. The problem is, Billy's behavior has been going on for 6 months. He sees a therapist, but there are no changes. Billy eventually goes to a private school and introduces himself as an animatronic. This leads to him being made fun of course, but he believes that he should not have feelings and does not care. In this robotics class, he learns that oil is needed to lubricate robotic joints, and so he, drinks oil. Off to the hospital he goes. One night, as Billy is trying to fall asleep, or shut down, I suppose, he overhears his mother refusing to his father to put him in an institution. Billy's father freaks out and states that this behavior has gone on for 4 years, and their lives are being ruined. The father leaves, and Billy's mother miserably goes along with her son's worldview. As the story progresses, Billy reads library books instead of going to school, gets a literal charging station, aka flat metal pedestals to lay on, to sleep on, and celebrates his 13th creation day on his actual 18th birthday. For this birthday, his mother and therapist are the only 2 guests. I don't know about you guys, but if you invite your therapist to your birthday, you're probably a very, very sad human being. Or animatronic. Finally, one day, Billy finds his mother dead, bare naked, in the bathtub, apparently having killed herself. After the authorities take her body away, Billy reads a document that he was to read only after his mother died. He was to change from a child robot to an adult robot, and he learns how to pay bills, get groceries, and drive. Soon, however, he starts to feel like he does not exactly belong, and calls up an unlicensed surgeon who will replace his human limbs with artificial prosthetics. He gets a leg down, but is not too satisfied with how it works. Nonetheless, he gets all 4 of his main limbs replaced with robotics, and has a lot of trouble with coordination and grabbing objects. He goes online to find solutions, and in the process discovers a chat room for people who are not satisfied with their physical appearance. He meets Malaya, who asks to meet in person after some discussion. At Billy's house, she is surprised to see his prosthetics and feels like he is such a brave man, though she also notices his flat voice. Malaya basically becomes Billy's girlfriend, and he is satisfied with this. However, he still needs to make himself a true robot, and he calls up his surgeon to have metal plates implanted over his cheekbones under the skin. Needless to say, Malaya is a little freaked out by this. Billy soon also makes his eyes completely black, gets a vocal synthesizer implanted in his throat, and has his ears and tongue removed. He also wants his head shaved and unnecessary parts removed. Soon he tells Malaya that he wants to be known as B7, and asks if she would like to join him for his 16th creation day, or 21st birthday. She refuses, obviously. On B7's special day, his 16th creation day, he looks into the mirror and his entire self-image that he has held for 16 whole years shatters. This 21-year-old man looks at all of the disgusting, irreparable transformations he has given himself and starts crying as he finally realizes just how much he had ruined his life and driven away everyone who cared for him. In great sadness, he sits down against the same sofa he sat against all those years ago to watch Freddy and Friends, the day he decided to become an animatronic, unknowingly going down a dark path that would go on to completely destroy such a great life. And as it gets dark, he gets up and walks away from his life. He eventually finds himself at a scrapyard and sleeps inside of an old car, believing that it was where he belonged now. Soon, he is awoken by a sharp vibration. A man is operating controls to crush the car. As the roof of the vehicle comes closer to Billy, he does not run. He actually welcomes it. The roof crushes against Billy's skull and blood spurts out of his mouth as he screams. Billy welcomes the pain and the blood, because they remind him of the human he was, who he was supposed to be, as his consciousness fades. I got really dramatic there all of a sudden. Wow, even though the story sounds dumb on paper, It ended up being one of my favorite FNaF stories ever. I'll go ahead and start with the negative, so it's really only one big negative. I'm not sure whether or not the television show brainwashed Billy into acting like a robot, or if it was just his childish imagination. If it was the show, I'm sure there have been a lot of reports talking about how kids were behaving strangely after watching Freddy and Friends. If it was his imagination, I'm really not sure how he could have held on to his beliefs after 16 years. Honestly, the reasoning for this is kinda dumb. And yet, I think the main reason why I found this story so enjoyable and so captivating was just how screwed up it is when you think about it. We get to see not only Billy's life get ruined by his own mistakes that he believes are things he should do, but also the lives of his parents. The father leaves his failed son after realizing that things may never get better. His mother is forced to live with this terrible mindset for years, until she finally can't take it anymore and commits suicide. It's not every day in FNaF that you see the deterioration of one's life occur right in your face. Also, somehow seeing how ridiculous Billy acts in the first act of the story is actually kind of funny to me. Like, honestly, something Billy says in the story is, "I think I am an animatronic because I am an animatronic." It's absurd, and I love it. I get that the way Billy thinks can get sort of annoying after a while, but it was more amusing to me than anything, and it was interesting to see how his thoughts changed as he got older. The ending where he finally realizes how misguided he has become and how he basically decided that there is no fixing his life was also really done. Really well done. I honestly have to give this one a 9.1. It was such a good read. Finally, we have the epilogue. I'm gonna quickly sum up the first epilogue for those who need a refresher. Basically, a rapid endoskeleton goes berserk and murders a bunch of workers and is sealed inside a pizzeria underneath the foundation for Freddy Fazbear's Mecha Pizzaplex. So yeah, just some everyday FNaF goodness. For this epilogue, we follow a girl named Lucia, who is apparently on a date with Jace. Not the dead one, no, this one's spelled with a Y. They are at a big carnival, and apparently some friends of theirs, Adrian, Hope, Kelly, and Nick, are there too. Some of their other classmates, Wade and Joelle, tease them a bit and then suggest that they explore the construction site of the Pizzaplex nearby. Lucia is rather worried as she heard stories of murders and paranormal events surrounding the franchise. After some discussion, however, the kids all decide to check it out. They make it into the underground pizzeria and start exploring. After a while though, they discover a giant pile of torn off arms and heads left over from the previous epilogue. The kids try to leave, but they can't leave through where they came in. Suddenly, they hear noises. They're coming from behind a nearby locked door, and the kids realize that someone else is here with them, and whoever it is, they're likely not going to help them escape. While it clearly does not have as much action as the first epilogue, I still like this one due to the fact that it seems to be setting up a giant group adventure, almost like that of the first FNaF novel, The Silver Eyes. I'm almost positive that not all of these kids are going to make it out alive, as there are basically 8 of them there right now. I'm not going to bother rating the epilogues, but I still think this one was pretty decent. I'm still holding on to the hope that this overarching story will help explain more about the lore of Security Breach. They could have Vanessa or Vanny show up, they could explain what happened to Bonnie. Yeah, I'm curious to see where this goes. So yeah, that was Happs. Like I said, I liked it a lot more than the Lally's game, and I'm genuinely excited to see what else we'll get in the future. I do hope we'll get more happy endings. Seriously, the last time we got anything close to a happy ending was from the Puppet Carver from Fazbear Frights number 9. And I'm not sure that the ending is even completely happy in that one. Well, make sure to subscribe if you like... if you enjoyed this video, and let me know if I should also put my thoughts about the first book here as well. That said, have a great rest of your... With that said, have a great rest of your day/evening.